projections, we're going to keep going through this cutting process until we're finally fed up with cutting. And what we need to do, in my opinion, is start, we need progressive tax reform, that's just sort of a given. But in order to get there, the people need to start voting in their own self-interest. Right now, the people, every time they get an income tax proposal out there in front of them, they just vote it down because they're scared to death or they don't understand it or whatever. What I want us to do is to start thinking about how do we build a statewide popular economics education campaign, start teaching the public about how money works, how their tax dollars work in the state. So, this is my thing. I'm trying to reframe it, and after having got to this Reclaim the American Dream thing, I think I'm working American Dream into the concept, but really the concept is we know what works. So what works is post-World War II till now, take that timeline, okay? What percent, what was the top marginal tax rate, income tax rate post-World War II? Does anybody know? Not God, this is a smart group. 91%. 91%. Can you believe that? That's what our parents, how they built America. So their philosophy was those who got the most out of the system were morally and socially obligated to return the most back into the system. And that's how we continue to build the system for everybody. That's how our parents and grandparents thought. Now, after Reagan comes in, years later, 1980, he flips that whole economic theory on its head. He says, those who get the most out of the system get to keep it, and they'll magically trickle jobs down to the rest of us. So now our income tax rate, top marginal rate is 35%. They're still talking about, there's always campaigns to cut in. Capital gains, taxes are way down. So we know that doesn't work. Look at our current situation. What we know works was, back then, the economic theory that our grandparents taught us, how to build America. That's the message that I'm trying to get back out there, is that when you talk to a Tea Party person, the Tea Party's analysis is, you've got the far right wing on the different abortion or whatever issues. But at their core, the thoughtful ones are objecting to what they perceive as overtaxation. So if you look at another statistic from post-World War II till now, what was the overall tax burden borne by corporations versus individuals back post-World War II? Yeah, well, it was about over 35% of all the taxes collected were paid by corporations. Now, it's less than 15%. It's probably down to closer towards 10 or 11%, which means the corporations have shifted the tax burden onto individuals, but it hasn't just shifted onto all individuals. It's shifted onto middle class and working poor people. Not you overlay on top of that another statistic, median family income. Okay, well, yeah, median family income has grown some over that same period. But what is median family income? Back then, you had one primary wage earner, and you had another, usually the mother, like my nuclear family, raised a great family, and life was good. Now you've got everybody under the household scrambling to make ends meet, and median family income includes all of those incomes. And has that kept up with anything? No, it's just barely risen. So there's been a shift away from, and I'm trying to frame this in terms of, I hate to use nationalistic talk and sort of right talk, but appealing to the family values thing. Where's the family values in having everybody under the roof working? Nobody spending time nurturing the family. So, or where's the American values of one person getting everything and trickling down some stuff, maybe for crumbs on the table. So the message that I'm trying to develop is we need to go back to what we know works. We need to get back to a tax system that is fair, adequate, country with, predictable if possible, and that makes sure that everybody's paying their fair share. So that's the 3-minute ditty. I need to work on that presentation. Raise that in your community groups, please.
Okay, question?
Yeah.
Okay, we can probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
Melanie, are you familiar with the CAPR funds?
Yeah.
Okay. I am no good at finance, so can you explain that a little better? My understanding of it is that, for instance, motor vehicles in Washington or a state, the state charges us, well, as I understand it, I get a certificate of title. So I have legal ownership of that vehicle because in my understanding of how this works is the state's created a trust with our vehicle titles. So they take equitable title, we get legal title. They then pool all of those titles together, and then somehow through bonds or something they create money with that. Is that real? Is that what's going on in some cases?
I don't know anything about motor vehicle titles, but I do understand the CAPR money. That's the comprehensive annual financial report that's put out by every government, local, state, et cetera, federal. They all have these reports, and in them, well, it was Walter Burien that first, reported on this, that or made a big issue of it. I guess there was a man before him. That they all have these big rainy day funds. In other words, they all have a bunch of money that's just accumulated there. And you could look at it conspiratorially and say the government has all the money and they've invested it in Wall Street and they own everything, and that's the conspiratorial view. But I was invited to speak at a conference of government finance officers in Missouri. So I got to go to lunch with them and stuff. And so I said, well, what about this CAPR money? What is all that? These rainy day funds. And I was told these are the people that had to pay the budgets for their local municipal governments. And they said, well, we don't have rainy day, we don't have credit lines like banks. That if we go over budget, that the government stops. And this has happened before, where everything just shut down because they have no money. They have to go to the voters. They have a bond issue. The voters might not approve it. Or they have to borrow from a bank at quite exorbitant interest rates. So they find that they're better off with these rainy day funds, saving some extra money for that. And so this one woman sitting at the table said, yes, my boss makes me put away 40% extra. And another man said, oh, that's too much. He said, I just do 25%. But think of it, 25% more than they need just as a rainy day fund. Now, if you had a bank, if you had your own state bank, like in North Dakota, you've got a credit line with the bank. You can get it for 0.2%, like banks can. That's the big advantage that Wall Street banks have. They can get money for almost nothing, and they can get it from the Fed for almost nothing. Whereas the local governments, it's like a two-tiered system. We're totally discriminated against. Local governments can go bankrupt, they can be forced into bankruptcy, they have to pay 5% interest, and look at in the EU, they're up to whatever, 14, or I'm not sure what it is. If you get your credit rating, it's ruined, and your interest rate goes way up. So that's what those funds are for. But I think what they should do with that money is use that for the capitalization for a bank. Yeah,
okay. That's what I wanted to hear.
And that's actually what they do in North Dakota. We've had phone calls with the Bank of North Dakota people, and they say, well, we have a little money in this fund. It's all very family style, and they just walk across the hall and they say, well, there's a little money here and there's a little here, so we just pulled that together, and they just do the practical thing and use the money for the capital for what they need, the capital that they need. Whereas here in California, they say, nope, that's the motor vehicle, or that's the highway fund. You can't use that for something else. They're very, very particular.
I could just say one thing about that. Also, as you know, there's a state there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot at your homes right now that forces the state to put excess revenues with some sort of definition into the rainy day fund. And you may notice that I voted no against that, as I voted against the original rainy day fund too, because I think that we should be reinvesting that, and that would be a great capitalization source for the bank too.
I already voted. Should have come here first. This is really exciting. I remember when I was really little learning that the big banks basically are ripping everybody off and run society. I remember in the 70s hearing figures that something like 0.2% of the American population controlled 75% of new investment. And it's a tremendous power, and of course, they're going to invest it in ways that are going to perpetuate their high power and privileged position in the economy. And of course, the banks have interlocking directorships with the corporations, and they're going to benefit the corporate model through that control of investment. I'm kind of an advocate of socialism, and I think, you know, public banks, federal bank would, you know, the idea that we're paying, you know, such huge interest rate on federal debt that, you know, every year we pay trillions of dollars to the military-industrial complex. And usually, I've been watching it for about 30 years, the payments on interest at the federal level tend to be on par with the military budget. But I wanted to turn this into a question. I'm interested in ideas about democratizing investment, and I see this, I think, how the money, I heard some discussion about the state bank would need to be run by real bankers and run like a bank, but they're making investment decisions, it seems to me, and so that, you know, infrastructure as a focus is really great. I think infrastructure money comes right back to the government in the increased taxation that it creates from the increased economic flow, and it's something that people in this country severely need to be educated about. Every time they say, we can't afford to fix the bridge, we can't afford to put in a public transit system. But I wanted to kind of get at that, how those kinds of decisions would end up being made about what gets funded, and if you got an idea for how it relates to democratic forces. Is there going to be any democratizing of investment implicit in this?
In North Dakota, they have a mission statement, and they have to serve the public interest. And their mission statement includes certain things, that certain areas they focus on, and these include energy and agriculture in North Dakota.